Good evening, good evening.
Evening.
How are you folks today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Okay,
I won't complain.
that's good.
Okay, what we're gonna do tonight is initially I'm gonna just do a quick review of chapter 3.
Okay.
Then we'll do then we'll review the homework questions, and then we will go back to chapter 4, complete that, and chapter 5, and then start chapter 6.
Okay.
So let's start with the review of chapter 3. Let's start the slideshow here. Okay. So you can all see the screen?
Yes.
PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so last class we looked at the type of business customers, among other things. And we looked at 3 in particular: the sole trader or sole proprietor, the partnership, and the corporation and company or limited company. Okay. We talked a little bit about the sole trader, and we said that you would see one a man or woman trading as, or sometimes you may see DBA, doing business as. Okay, it's the same thing. So one person trading as or doing business as, XYZ, coffee shop or whatever it is. Okay, and we looked at the characteristics of the sole trader and the limits in terms of capital resources and obtaining credit facilities. We also looked at the partnership and how it's similar in some ways to the sole proprietor, and how it's different. One of the things I don't think I may have said with regard to the last point, where it says individual and or joint liability for any and all claims that might arise. You may have heard the term or the phrase jointly and severally liable. Okay, so severally, SEVERALLY. You may have heard that term, that these people are, or these parties are jointly and severally liable. What that means is that they can go after the individual, or they could come after both parties. Okay?
Excuse me. Good afternoon, everyone.
So,
Good afternoon, Mr. Nottage.
So in the partnership, they could go after. Good afternoon. So
I have a question. I just got an invite. Is that the case?
Pardon?
Pardon?
I just got an invite. Was that the case? Because I see you guys have already started. I just got an invite from the gentleman from BIT. Like, I don't have this to always come in. Is that the case?
Yeah, you would get the he would send out the invite around about 2, 3 o'clock or something or thereabouts.
Because mine just came in 6:05, and I noticed that the class has already started.
Yeah, okay, well, you'll have to take those kind of issues, you have to take up with them. I'm not
Okay.
staff at this. I'm just an
No,
adjunct
no, no, no,
lecturer.
no. I just wanted you to know. I understand.
Yeah, okay. So
Okay, thank you.
but uh they would be aware because Mr. Pratt is um monitoring this and he's also recording. So if he doesn't hear the exchange live, he will see it in the recording, and I will also bring it to his attention
Okay, thank you.
after class. Okay,
Yes, sir.
but you should he normally sends it out. Sometimes he'll send out early in the morning, 10 a.m. Sometimes he'll send out 2, 3 p.m. But you should get it, and if there's a delay, it's probably the server. It's probably the servers. Okay.
Okay, thank you so
So
much, Mr. Nade.
okay, no problem. Okay, so the point I was making with regard to individual and or joint liability, the last point with regard to partnership, I don't think I said I don't think I mentioned it last class, but you may have heard the phrase jointly and severally liable. Severally, Severally, severally. Okay, what that means is they can come after the individual partner, any one of them, or they can come after them jointly. Okay, and you may recall that I mentioned last class that you would in your documentation a very well put together um, uh, borrowing document when you're lending to a partnership. You would want to ensure that you can go after any one of the individuals or them both. Because sometimes some partnerships are not all 50-50, right? And there may be partnerships with 3 people or more, okay? Partnerships of, 2, 3 persons, sometimes more, but usually 2 or 3 persons. But in the case of it's 2 persons, it's not always 50-50. Some people may have put in 55%, some may have put in 45%, okay? But the bank is not, we should not be concerned about going after them in terms of their capital injection, okay? We want to go after them in the individual capacity, and we want to go after them in their joint capacity, because we're looking at the partnership as one individual, one borrowing individual, okay? So we're looking at the partnership, not the partners when we're dealing with that particular business, that type of business. So you want to make sure that you are able to go after the partners, any 100% or both or all of them if there's more than 2, 100%. Okay, so you make sure your documentation is well put together. And like I said, most financial institutions, when it comes to partnerships and companies or corporations, they do get their lawyers involved. Although some of them do have standard, we have standard in-house documents that we can execute. You must really be careful when you're executing them. So even if you execute them in-house, my recommendation would still be is to run it by your retained attorney. Most of the larger banks have retained attorneys, that is law firms or attorneys who they keep under retainer. They pay them an annual fee, and there's some basic things that the attorney or the lawyer firm would provide. And some of that is like general advice and counsel. Now, when it comes to a specific client, that's when the law firm would probably begin to start charging on an individual basis. But generally, when you have a law firm on retainer, you have the ability to be able to call them up and run certain scenarios by them without being specific about a particular customer. Okay, so that's jointly and severally liable. The last point on the partnership. And then the third business customer, type of business customer we looked at was a corporation or a company. And we noted that this differs dramatically from the partnership and or the sole proprietorship, in that this is the most expensive structure, one, to set it up and to maintain in terms of fees, annual fees to the government and fees to attorneys and that sort of stuff. But there are also some other benefits, because you now have a pool of persons who you can draw knowledge from. If one of the owners dies, resigns, quits, retires, the company still goes on doing business. You see, there's limited liability, so you can't go after the individual owner or owners. Your liability as a banker is limited to the assets that the corporation or company owns, not the owner. Okay. And again, to reemphasize, there's continuity of the business should the owner resign, quit, or one of them resigns, quits, or dies. Okay. So that was the three types. Okay. And then we looked at how they we cater to them in terms of products, and we said that we would get more into the customs bond, customs check, writing, performance bond, and there's another one, bid bond, and a fifth one we'll look at a little later. But you see, with the sole trader, they would have to take any facilities in their personal names. Okay, the same thing for the partnership. However, when it comes to the corporation, they can be taken in the name of the corporation, okay, or limited company. Then we looked at, took a closer look at some key elements that we need to be concerned with as bankers when a company or corporation comes to us, either to open up an account, a deposit account, or to do borrowing business with us. Okay, and we spoke about the importance of the articles, the memorandum of association, then the borrowing resolution, the resolution to appoint the bankers, the company seal, the certificate of good standing or the certificate of incorporation. And we indicated that there's a difference between the two. The certificate of incorporation occurs when a company or corporation is first being incorporated. So that's their first year. After the first year, certificates of good standing are issued. So you would have a certificate of incorporation for the first year of business and certificates of good standing for every subsequent year. So that's the difference between the two of those items. Okay. And we looked at the, as I mentioned, the Articles of Memorandum of Association and 5 components. Okay. And the fifth one, excuse me, the fifth one, we said that the Articles of Memorandum of Association, this is known as the company's borrowing power. Okay, and notice the word, how borrowing is spelled, okay, with an O, B-O-R-R, borrowing, not borrowing. B-U is what rabbits do, they borrow holes in the ground and that sort of stuff. Okay, so it's borrowing power. And I said, don't confuse the memorandum and articles of association, the borrowing power, with the borrowing resolution. Okay, they're mutually exclusive. However, you must have articles of memorandum of association in order for there to be a borrowing resolution. You can have the borrowing power, but you don't necessarily need a borrowing resolution unless you're going to borrow. Okay? But if you're going to borrow in your corporation, you must have that borrowing power, that ability to borrow. And that is contained in the Articles and Memorandum of Association. We also looked at five elements of the borrowing resolution. Okay, so when this company wants to borrow, the board of directors, they do this resolution. They have a meeting, either a regular meeting or an extraordinary meeting, and they come up with this borrowing resolution. And at the end of the day, it must be executed under seal. That is sealed with the company's seal. And we talked a little bit about the company's seal. There's a picture of its company seal and an imprint right there. Okay. So we also spoke about the resolution to appoint bankers, and we said that this was it can be this is another resolution that the directors of the company would execute. And usually the financial institution, the bankers, we have standard forms, resolution to appoint bankers, and it needs to be completed properly under seal by the proper people who are authorized to sign on behalf of the company. So whether the resolution is one that is drafted by the company or one that you, as a banker, have a form, one of your form letters kind of thing, form resolutions. Either one of those is okay to accept. Usually banks want their form executed. Okay, and of course we talked about the company's seal. Okay, in keeping with normal sound banking practice, sound business practice, and most importantly, to comply legally with the Companies Act 1992 and all subsequent amendments or any that may refer. Okay, and you see that a lot of these documents that we talked about, if not all of them, form a part of your account mandate. So the resolution to appoint bankers, the signature card, copy of the Articles and Memorandum of Association, the current annual return and certificate of good standing, and any other documents that you may require as a financial institution for a company who's opening an account with you, that's deposit or a borrowing customer. Okay, and then finally in this chapter we talked about annual requirements. So the annual return, it indicates the authorized officers of the company, etc. And again, we talked about the certificate of good standing or certificate of incorporation. Okay. Any questions before we go on?
No.
Okay.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Let me just check my notes to make sure I'm not leaving out anything important, vitally important. Okay. I've returned last night I returned the graded papers. So let's go over. So you pull out your homework assignments and let's look at those questions. Okay. So Question number 1 says, banks need to properly assess the risk of each borrower in order to minimize bad debts, to ensure the bank's profitability, to protect the bank's image, to price loans correctly, and to protect shareholders' interest. Excuse me, that is true. A. Okay. Question number 2, that is false. Reserve requirements are set by the Clearing Banks Association. Reserve requirements are set by the Central Bank of the Bahamas. Okay. 3 is true. The bank does not wish to grant loans to parties where the down payment, security, or collateral, or the source of repayment have been derived from unlawful activities. That's true. 4, knowing that all risks are not equal is an essential element to understanding risk. Again, that's true. Okay. 3 key aspects of lending are understanding risk, assessing risk, and maintaining risk. That is false. Why would that be false?
I believe that's the question that I didn't get right.
Okay. Okay.
So could somebody answer it for me?
Oh, pick up myself. What question is that?
It was supposed to be managing risk, not maintaining risk, right?
Right, managing risk. Okay, you certainly don't want to maintain risk. Okay, so
Also, I think I probably overlooked it. So I know I thought I got that one.
Yes. Okay. So
right until when I got it back, I see I got it wrong.
Right. So understanding risk, assessing risk, and managing risk. Those who were present in class, I mentioned that you cannot eliminate risk, but you can manage it. Okay. But you certainly don't want to maintain risk. You want to, if you could eliminate it, eliminate it. But the best you can do is mitigate against it. That's a fancy word. Mitigate means minimize it, and possibly eliminate it if you can. Okay. But again, it's not possible to eliminate all risks. You may eliminate some, but it's difficult to totally eliminate risk. So the best you can do is manage your risk. Okay. So that was false. In a partnership, the partner with the least assets has no liability for any claims. That's false. Okay, as we said earlier tonight, that you can go after any one of the partners. You can go after them separately, or you can go after them combined. Okay. The purpose of an overdraft facility is to supply working capital, short-term funding to individuals, supply working capital to bridge the gap between accounts receivable days or payable days to businesses. That's true. Okay. 8 is also true. The sole trader or sole proprietor has limited access to capital, generally speaking. Okay.
Number 8 is true?
8 is true.
Okay.
Okay.
So
I'll just go through those again. 1 is true. 2 is false. 3 is true. 4 is true. 5 is false. 6 is false. 7 is true.
and you said 8 is true?
And 8 is true.
Pardon?
Pardon?
Yes. 8 is true.
8 is true.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Just a quick note. On the answer sheets, put in the letter as opposed to true and false.
Okay.
Okay. So A for true, B for false. Because I'm trying to follow a similar pattern how some of the SATs and some of the other exams are graded.
Okay.
And they look for characters or markings and whatnot. So just so that we kind of get ourselves accustomed to doing online type questions. Okay,
Oh,
so you'll
okay.
put in A or B, and then of course most of you didn't have a problem with section 2. So you did put in the letter answer for that. So that wasn't a problem. Okay, so section 2, question 1. All of the following are true about reserve requirements except. Oh, let me say something about these types of questions, okay? Once upon a time, I used to put, well, let me just say this. Look out for words such as except, not, and only. There may be some other ones, okay? But
So now that you
look out
trick us on that.
Pardon?
I said that was a tricky one. I didn't read except I was waiting for you to make mention of that.
Yeah, well, it isn't tricky, but it's just that watch out for words such as accept, not, and only. Okay, there was a time when I used to bold face them. Okay, and I've stopped doing that. Okay, but look out for those. Make sure that you read it. The questions carefully, okay? So all of the following are true about reserve requirements except, and the exception is A. Banks can lend to clients against secondary reserves, but not against primary reserves. Remember now, you cannot lend against any reserves. That's why they're called reserves. Okay, they're reserves, they're set aside. Okay? So as soon as you hear the word reserves or reserve requirements, you know that money is set aside for you not to lend against. The bank cannot lend against those. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the words kind of imply. So that's one way of helping yourself to remember. Okay. So question number 2. Credit can be defined as it would be E. Only A and C are definitions of credit. Okay,
It's E?
A says a belief of others that a person, it would be E, as in everybody,
Uh-huh.
because only A and C are definitions.
Okay. Okay.
All right. 3 is E as well. So A and C only. In the argument as to whether lending is an art or a science, A, lending combines the science of obtaining and analyzing, etc. And C, is basically a science because it involves tools such as debt service ratios, etc. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it certainly isn't B because you don't go in a science lab. And it certainly isn't D just because I said so. Okay? So 4, let's go on to 4. Now you'll see, you'll recall that I think in both previous classes, I mentioned that sometimes some questions may come up. It may be true and false in one, multiple choice, or fill in the blanks.
Uh-huh.
You'll notice that this one is one that was in true and false in some way. So 3 key aspects of lending are understanding risk, assessing risk, and managing risk. So the
Mr.
answer
Nada,
is
can I say something when you're done?
sure. Go ahead.
I'm very upset at myself for the fact that I got that one right, but I didn't get the first question you worded in the first section right. So it's like, it's not tricky. It's just that you need to carefully read the questions and just analyze the question and then answer. Because I
Right.
was very mad at myself that I got that right and the first section wrong.
Yeah. So
That's
you know,
okay.
but see, particularly when you come to the midterm and the final exam,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there are only so many questions that you can ask on a topic, and so you'll find that some aspect of that question is asked later on in the exam,
Mm-hmm.
right, in one of the other areas. And so sometimes, like so let's say for example, um, the question related to this was in section 1 was question number 5. So if
Mm-hmm.
you got stumped on question number 5 in section 1, okay, again, well, we'll talk a little bit more about test taking techniques closer to the midterm exam. But one of the things that you want to do is if you get stuck on a question, um, just take a note of it. Just put a pencil mark or question, put a little question mark or however you want to notate that you need to come back to that question, or circle the number in pencil that you need to come back to that. But don't spend too much time on it. Go through some of the other questions
Mm-hmm.
because you may find the topic may pop up in one of the other sections. Okay, or there may be sufficient questions in that section where the topic comes up again. Okay, and so it may then jog your memory. Or, sometimes when we're taking exams, we may be a little bit uptight, right? So, so you feel a little bit of pressure. So you say, boy, so you leave that one, do all the ones that you can do, and then go back to those ones. Then you find that you'll be a little bit more relaxed because you say, well, I've now finished my paper. There are now 3 or 5 questions I wasn't sure of. I'll have to go back to those. So you're a little bit more relaxed, and you find that your brain works better because you're more relaxed, and sometimes too you've gone over some of the other information, so you've had time to process it. Okay.
Okay.
So so again, question number 4 is kind of mirrors question 5 in true and false. Alrighty. So the answer on that was C: understanding risk, assessing risk, and managing risk. 5, individuals borrow. F is the answer. F as in fat boy. So A, B, and C. Okay.
Why did
So,
you use that definition?
pardon?
Easy,
Why
Mr.
did you
Knowledge,
use that
easy.
description?
Well, okay. Well, fat mouse. Okay.
Okay.
Fat. Okay. So, so A is to establish credit relationships. B is to fund short-term requirements, and C is to purchase very large and expensive items. Okay, we can eliminate B and C because we know that A is also, and then we can eliminate E because again it says A and C only, but we also know that B is a reason that they borrow. All right. Okay, on to question 6. Okay, what are the main reasons why businesses borrow? Okay, the answer is D, as in dog. So A, B, and C are all reasons. Okay. 7, the following are credit facilities that are available to businesses: customs bonds, customs check writing facilities, performance bonds, all of the above, B only, none of the above. So D is the correct answer, all of the above. And then finally, number 8, a letter of credit facilitates international trade and guarantees payment for exporters. So that's B as in boy.
Okay.
All right. And we'll look a little bit more about letters of credit or documentary credits tonight. How they work, not so much getting into the document itself. because that's a different course. So section number 3, fill in the blanks. Okay, banks lend because interest income, and this is what you need to put in there, from loans represents the primary source of revenue for the bank. Okay, so from loans, okay, so interest income from loans represents the primary source of revenue. Okay, so those are 3 key things that have to be in there. Okay, so it's the interest income from loans that represents the primary source of revenue for the bank. Number 2, you can put in corporation or company or limited company. Okay, so corporation, company, or limited company. 3, a company's articles and memorandum of association is known as its borrowing. I mentioned this earlier. Borrowing spelled with an O. Okay, you want to borrow, you don't want to borrow. As I mentioned earlier, borrow is what, squirrels and rabbits do. They burrow in the ground or whatever it is. Okay, there are 4 main reasons why businesses borrow. It says here, 1 is to fill the gap between accounts receivable and accounts payable. That is working capital requirements. List 1 other reason. So you can have any one of to purchase highly priced items, to fund a project, or for business expansion. Or they may be unable to obtain credit from suppliers. So any one of those 3. To purchase highly priced items, to fund a project, or for business expansion, or they may be unable to obtain credit from suppliers. Okay. We're going to have probably, I guess then at the end of the day, probably 4 or 5 homework assignments. The more you have, the better you'll be prepared in doing your exams. And again, what I recommend with the homeworks is, as well as the end of chapter questions, try to complete them first without referring to your text and see how you do. And then when you get ready to do your final answers, you may want to compare your answers with the text, especially for those that you are submitting for homework. Okay, so the reason that I say to try it without referring to your text, of course, that is for those who have read the text already. So if you've read the text already, try to complete the end of chapter questions and the homework questions, right? Without using the book first. So you do your homework rough, and then when you're ready to do your final, you compare your answers to your homework with the text, and then you complete your homework assignment, and that's what you submit. The reason I recommend that is that you find that when you get an answer wrong, it tends to stick, okay? And you tend never to forget it again, okay? And so that is why sometimes you hear parents talking about, I'm teaching you some tough love, okay? Because they want you to experience certain things for yourself, so that when you're on your own, you don't make those type of errors again. And I remember there were certain things I didn't understand at the time that my parents allowed me to go through and do certain things and have failures. But they were there in case I needed them, right? So when I eventually went on my own, there's some things they say, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. Or yeah, I remember that. That's the way to go. Okay. So sometimes the best lessons and the ones that stay with us for life are the ones that we where we have had a done it wrong or we've failed. So many other. I'm not encouraging you to go and fail now. What I'm saying is, you can fail in a controlled environment in this course. Just like I just mentioned, try the questions without referring to your text once you've read it previously, then go back and compare it with your text. And then for your homework and then chapter questions. Okay. All right. Okay, we began looking at chapter 4, the kinds of lending products, and section in blue. If you weren't in class or you came to class a little late, the section in blue is what you needed to add to both of those columns. For the first product, revolving access to funds, for both the overdraft, the overdraft facility for business and personal or individuals. Okay, and we mentioned that the first 4 products, which appear on that chart on your page 15. Okay, the first 4 products are common to the individual borrower or personal borrower as well as the business customer. Sorry. All right. Now let's look at before we go there. Okay. Page 16 of your text. Because there's some people who haven't been exposed to or who are not in financial services, who don't work for a bank. Okay, so just quickly to recap, an overdraft facility is normally attached to a checking account, not a savings account. Okay, or a current account. It's the account in which you can write checks, and it allows you to go overdrawn. You have a set limit, and for businesses, as we had mentioned, for businesses, it's to help them in that period between when they sell a good, some goods, and they collect money from those goods. Because sometimes people will buy goods from them on credit, but if the money isn't, if the customers aren't paying them quickly enough, and they need to buy more goods, supplies, or stock for the business, then they need they would need some sort of credit. So if they don't have credit with with a supplier, if the supplier doesn't give them credit, they may have to take out an overdraft facility for the business. Okay, very similar with the individual. So let's say, for example, you have a you have a bill. Well, let's start with when you get paid. So let's say that you get paid. Let's say that you get paid on the 28th of the month. Okay, you get paid on the 28th of the month, but you have one or more bills that come due on the 20th of the month. Okay, as with many of us, we really don't have the savings and the resources to be able to say, oh, I could get from my savings, cover the bill, and then put the savings back. The way things work for most people in the real world is that you're basically living paycheck to paycheck. So the overdraft facility helps that person, for example, who has that bill on the 20th, but it's paid on the 28th. So you get an overdraft, so you overdraw your account, you pay that bill, and when your salary comes in on the 28th, a portion of that salary eliminates the overdraft. So let's say that you have a bill, you have an overdraft for $1,000. You have an overdraft for $1,000. You have a bill that comes in that's for $300 on the 20th. So you overdraw your account by $300. And so when your salary comes in, let's say your salary is $1,500. So when your salary comes in, you won't have $1,500 available to you. You only have $1,200 available to you because 300 of that has to go towards eliminating the overdraft. Okay, so just like with businesses, you need to cover those gaps between accounts receivables and accounts payable. So an accounts payable for individuals would be the bill. The accounts receivable for the individual would be their salary that they expect to get. Okay. Is that understood? For the individual? Yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Alrighty. So for the individual, their term loans, page 16, we're on. This is a medium to short-term financing to assist with the purchase of large price items, cars, furniture, appliances, as well as to assist with structured repayments of large expenses, such as medical, educational, funeral, and other similar needs, sometimes wants. Okay, so the benefits include installment payments, clear payment terms, and fixed interest rates. Okay, and you'll find on term loans or consumer loans or personal loans, those three terms used interchangeably. You'll find the interest rates on those are normally higher than mortgages. Okay, for the individual, and we can look at that in more detail. But basically it's because it is higher risk. So because it's a higher risk, you pay more interest. It's a shorter term. So banks, we want to make as much money as we can, unlike a mortgage over a long period of time. And and normally the consumer loan nowadays is pretty much unsecured. Sometimes we'll take a chattel mortgage over a car, chattel mortgage over furniture or something else. But generally speaking, consumer loans or term loans or personal loans are unsecured. And so that's one of the reasons they're high risk, considered high risk, and thus the higher interest rate. Again, mortgages, we'll get to this in a minute. Mortgages tend to be lower because they're over a longer period of time and they're secured by real estate, which is fairly safe investment, even in our country under our circumstances. Okay, particularly undeveloped land. Okay, and then of course we have mortgages is the third item. It says this is a long term, normally for the purchase of property, such as vacant land, land and house construction, existing house, or purchase of a condo. It says the average term of vacant land is 10 years, average term for construction or completed structures is 20 years or more. Okay, and also mortgages are also taken out for people who already own a piece of property, real estate, whether it's developed or it has a building or buildings on it. It's what they call equity financing. So you use the equity in your property to finance some other need. So you may want to start a business. So you take out that, use the equity to start a business, as opposed to taking a personal loan, again, because the interest rate is higher, okay, on the personal loans. So you may say, I'll take the mortgage loan out instead, because I pretty much will pay probably half the rate of interest in some instances. Depends on which financial institution it is.
So is that like borrowing against your house?
Yes, borrowing against your house. It's called equity.
Okay.
Equity borrowing.
Okay.
Okay, and equity is what you own in your property.
Okay.
Okay, so if you have no loans outstanding against your property, then you have 100% equity. If you still owe on the property, it's the value of the property minus the outstanding balance at the bank. So the difference between those two would be your equity. We'll look into that a little later, or as we progress in the course.
Okay.
And then the fourth one here for individuals is the credit card, and again the benefits include people can get cash advances on the credit cards. It's convenient, and the safety factor not having to carry cash, and something that we don't tell our customers is that they can benefit if they pay their balance in full during that month or during that accounting cycle. If the customer figures out what the accounting cycle is and they pay the balance off in full, there's no interest on what they've charged on the credit card. Okay, so those are some of the benefits. And when you go to page 17, it is similar to the facilities, overdraft facilities, the corporate credit card. They are similar. So let's look at some of the things that are different. Okay. So on the top of your page 17, there's letter of credit, documentary credit. I'll look at that last. Okay. And I want to go to check guarantee down toward the bottom of page 17 after corporate credit card. Everyone sees that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So check guarantee. This is an undertaking by the bank to the beneficiary or the supplier, guaranteeing the payment of checks up to a certain amount. Okay. I don't know the extent to which this is used nowadays, but it was something that certainly can be used if necessary. But because we're now moving more with modern technology and whatnot, you're finding that payment by checks or payments by check are becoming fewer and fewer nowadays. Okay, but this is something that may still be available. Your financial institution may or may not offer it, but it is certainly a product where the client would go into the bank and will come into your financial institution and set it up. And what it does is that it guarantees, so let's say, for example, I have I produce shoes locally, okay? So, Glenn's Shoes, or Glenn Shoe Store, whatever it is, Glenn Shoe Store, yeah, okay? So let's say Glenn Shoe Store, and I have some of my local suppliers, and I need to get stuff, I need, some of my paper bags, some of the other things that I go with my business, maybe ink cartridges for my machines and whatnot, for my toner, that kind of thing. So I have some local suppliers that I deal with, and so I want I want to pay them by check. Okay, I don't want to I don't want to send cash. I'm not doing credit. I want to pay them by check. But I want them to feel confident that my checks will not bounce. Okay, so what will happen is I'll set it up with the bank, and the bank will give those suppliers, and it's normally some sort of standard form. Okay, some standard form, and so when I go in, I send the messenger or one of the clerks or somebody else in the business, one of the salespeople, whoever is available at the time, to go and purchase the goods, whatever it is. They'll give one of my checks, and I get my stuff, no problem. Okay. If there is a problem with one of the checks for some reason, the bank can step in, because normally the bank has some sort of cash asset of mine, some fixed deposit or something they're holding. Okay, and for a lot of these business instruments that we'll be looking at now, the next 4 or 5 instruments we'll be looking at, usually they're all supported by cash. They're all backed by some sort of cash product or near cash product. Okay, so it could be stocks, bonds, share certificates, that kind of thing as well. All right, so that's a check guarantee, which is again an undertaking by the bank to the supplier, guaranteeing the payment of checks up to a certain amount. All right. So now let's look at some other items. So let's look at customs bonds. Okay. Under other corporate products, on bottom of page 17, okay, it says customs bond guarantees the payment of import duty up to a specified amount. Okay. As the name implies, this is a bond for paying customs duties. Okay, so we said Glen Shoe Store, I have a shipment of shoes coming in. They're actually already in. I need to now go and clear those off the dock. Customs gives me my bill, and say this is what it is, and they release my stuff because they have a customs bond. Okay, so the customs bond will say, let's say I've signed a customs bond up to $50,000. Okay, and this shipment of shoes comes, the customs duty, VAT, whatever it is, my bill for customs comes to $10,000. They will release that to whomever is clearing those shoes for me. It could be me, or it could be my messenger, or it could be someone from the shoe store coming to collect it. And I don't have to carry any check. I don't have to carry any cash, no credit card, nothing. Okay, because customs is guaranteed to be paid up to $50,000, and this bill is only $10,000. Okay, so they'll just make a note. So from the 50, I now have 40,000 available. So now I had another shipment come in. That shipment is 25,000, and I have not paid the first 10,000. Then they'll also note the 25,000. So now I have a total of 35,000 against that 50,000. So I have 15,000 left. Okay. So now I have a shipment coming for 20,000. I need I can only benefit from the 15,000 I have left, but I don't have to take them. I'll just check or some other facility to pay $5,000 difference. Okay, so that's how the customs bond would work. And again, this is a standard form letter that the customer would obtain from Customs Department. They would take it to, they would bring it to you, their banker who's dealing, the department that deals with their accounts, or this particular type of product. It would be um, executed also by the bank, or verified by the bank. Then the client will take that duly completed document back to Customs Department, and they will put that on record. Okay. The next one is Customs check writing bond. Okay. This is again also for the Customs Department for clearing items with customs. But in this instance, you do have insurance involved. Okay, with the customs, you don't have to take no credit check, no draft money on it. Okay, with the customs check writing facility, you present a check. Okay, so so similar to how the customer ran into customs, they got the customs bond. Well, they'll go in for a customs check writing bond. That's available at some department. And when a shipment comes in, let's say, for example, let's use the same example with Glen Shoe Store.
Mr. Nodit, are you still there?
I don't think so. I can't hear him. It said he left.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe he'll join after he gets through. Light didn't go off.
Hi, Mr. Knowledge.
No, he left.
Oh, the signal dropped there.
I don't know. I hope his electricity didn't turn off. Yes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Let's hope that's not the case.
No, let's hope not.
You're a really lousy boy.
Why all the people?
What? Oh my god. Oh my goodness. Is he back as yet?
No.
Okay. It's powerful.
Oh, somebody just posted. They look like he's a biff. Say the power's off, eh? Think the power's off there.
Oh, the lights. Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, there's somebody just posted Crystal. Say looks like he's a biff. Think power off.
That's what we assumed, right?
And nobody has his number, eh? Anybody can have his number. And yeah, but here's his number I can call. In the book. Let me see. I don't think it in the
I'm
book.
gonna try calling Biff's and see if I can
Okay.
determine exactly if the power is off. I think I have Miss Dean's number.
Yeah, because the base phone should still be operational once the power goes off, eh? The land-based phone.
Yeah.
The cordless phones don't be operational.
Checking out. I'm getting voicemail from the Institute. No one's picking up.
Maybe they don't have a regular.
So if he doesn't return in a few, I'll leave and return when I get home.
Hold on, folks. Hold on, folks.
Oh, there you go, Mr. Nottage.
Hi. Welcome back.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try to get this.
He left again. Hello?
No, not as yet.
Oh.
Mr. Notice came back on, but he said give him an opportunity. He was trying to, I guess, get settled or get reconnected.
Okay.
Just give me a minute, please.
Okay then.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you on your screen.
Yeah. Apologize for that. Okay. Yeah, okay. I got a little note coming up saying that my internet connection was unstable. I don't know. Okay. All right. Where did we get cut off? I had started explaining customs check writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the customs check writing is similar to customs bond, but it's different in that you present a check. Okay. So the customs bond, you do not carry any negotiable instrument with you. You don't carry a check with the customs bond, credit card, manager's check, none of that. Okay. But with the customs check writing bond facility, you make payment by check. Okay. So just like the customs bond guarantees the payment of import duty up to a specified amount, you can cover your customs import duties by paying via check up to a specified amount. So again, if Glenn Shoe Store need to declare $10,000 worth of customs duty, I would send my people with a check, okay, drawn on my account.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Knowledge, let me ask a question. This is personal check because I thought in order, pardon me?
Yes, this would be the personal check.
Oh, okay.
Because you have a guarantee. Okay, you wouldn't. This is where this differs from the customs bond. The customs bond, you carry nothing at all. Okay, with the customs check writing facility, you carry a check. You see,
This isn't a
every
special
time you need to
check,
clear stuff,
right?
you carry a check. Again, sorry.
It's not a special
Sorry?
check, right, Mr. Nottage? It's not a special check. It's just your personal check.
Right. If I'm an individual, it's my trading as account check, or if I'm well, in this instance, I probably, let's say my shoe store is actually been incorporated, right? So it's not Glen, or it's trading as Glen Shoe Store. It's Glen Shoe Store Limited, so it's a limited company. Okay, so it would be the check, the checking account in the name of Glen Shoe Store. Okay.
Correct. Thanks.
All right. So and again, they'll mark it off. So let's say I have a $50,000 check writing facility guarantee. So they'll knock off the 10,000. So they'll knock off the 10,000, and within a few, they'll wait a few days, probably a couple of weeks or whatever it is. And if the check isn't returned, then of course, by the end of the month, they'll, or whatever their waiting period is, they'll say, okay, you could go back up to 50,000 again. Okay. But as long as none of your checks bounce, you can keep writing for any amount up to $50,000 of the customs check writing facility. Okay. And if the check does bounce, let's say that there's some sort of glitch, customs department will get their money either directly from the client, or the bank would cover it. Okay, because the bank is holding funds for that kind of customs bond and the customs check writing facility or guarantee. Okay.
So, Mr. Norwich, so that means then funds are on the client's account. That, hello? Hey, Mr. Norwich?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
So
Yeah,
is that to say that funds are on?
Normally it's cash. Normally they're back. Go ahead.
So that means that there's funds on this account that the client cannot
Yeah.
utilize, then it's only on hold for that purpose.
Right. Okay. So so let's say I have they would hold of course by lien they hold $50,000 of that. Okay. And so only $200,000 would be available for me to use if I needed money. Okay.
Okay.
Usually these bonds are supported by cash or kind. So it could be stock, shares, bonds, that type of thing. Usually cash. Okay. So here's a bid bond. Okay, and so the bid bond. This is a different type of bond. This has nothing to do with customs. The first two dealt with customs. Okay. The bid bond and the performance bond that we'll be looking at after this, they usually deal with contract jobs, okay? And in the Bahamas, they're usually with government, okay? Around the world in America, you can have bid bonds and you can have performance bonds. From one company to another company, okay? But in Bahamas, primarily, the ones that I've seen are really to do with government, okay? So it says it assures and guarantees that should a bidder, usually for construction jobs, be successful, he will execute the contract or contracts and provide required security of surety bonds. Okay, so so you'll find that let's say that the government has they want to build a school in Acklands. Okay, or let's look at what something that happened. The government wanted someone to build the BAMSI facilities. Okay, in Andros. Okay, so the contractors who were interested in that BAMSI job, they had to submit bids for the job. Okay, and one of the requirements for those bids was that they submit a bond. Okay, and normally those bonds were cash backed. Okay, they were backed by cash. Okay, and you had to satisfy the government that you had the required funds to do that particular job, to do the BAMSI job. Okay, and so once the bidding process is over and the successful bidder has been determined, okay, the other the successful bidder would do whatever other is required of him to now go into the next stage, which we'll be looking at in a minute, the performance bond. Okay, so then it means all the other bidders will then be released. Okay, their bonds will be released, and so they now have access to their funds. Okay, so again, a bid bond is something that you would collect from the relevant government agency, and you would take it to the customer. The contractor would bring it to you, the banker. You would complete it. Once you satisfy, you do all your back office stuff to make sure the funds are set aside, et cetera, and then so you execute the bid bond. The contractor will take that back with his application to the particular government agency and say, I've satisfied all your requirements. Here's my bid bond as well. Okay, so that is the that is required in the bidding process. Okay. After that is over, comes the performance side of it. Okay. And so the performance bond may be for the same amount, or may be for a greater amount. Okay. So the performance bond is issued. The performance bond is issued for the performance of the contract. Okay, so the bid bond, I've gotten the contract. Now the performance bond is done for the performance. Okay, and what happens is the money is set aside so that if the contractor does not complete the building satisfactory or not at all, the government has recourse. Okay, so the government has recourse, and it can claim against that guarantee. Again, this is the guarantee that the contractor would take into their banker. The banker would execute it, and the executed performance bond would be taken back to the government agency handling that particular contract. Okay, which leads me to like what happened with BAMSI when they said that the insurance wasn't paid, right, when the building was caught on fire or set afire. I don't know how much the performance bond was, but the performance bond should have been significant enough, right? Should have been significant enough that the government should have been able to take most, if not all, of its money from the bond, because it was because of the contractor's fault that the building was not insured or the insurance lapsed. It was his fault. So there should have been sufficient funds in the performance bond for the government to take. I worked at a financial institution when the Doris Johnson School is being built, high school is being built, and that had some problems because the contractor did poor workmanship, and so he was called upon to do some corrections, and so he was pushing back. Okay, he was pushing back, pushing back against doing them, and so then the government had to end up getting someone else to complete the job. Well, make the corrections and complete the job. Okay, so the contractor approached the bank that I was at, and I was in the department that dealt with those things, and the contractor came to us and asked for us to release the money. I think it was at least about $1 million that I can remember. It was like $1.something million. And so the contractor asked us to release the money because he said that the government had fired him, and the government had issued the contract for corrections to another contractor and to complete. So, and all this was in the news, so we were aware of what was happening. But I called the Treasury Department, and I told the Treasury Department what was happening. Can we release the bond, the performance bond? And they said, no, you cannot release it until after the new contractor has finished his job, and then we have to wait for the retention period to expire. And then if there were no issues, once the school was open and functioning and whatnot, if there are no issues, then they would make a decision whether or not to release the original contractor for the performance bond. Okay, and up to the time that I was there, that contractor, at least up at the time that I was there, never got the money back. And it probably got it released, maybe after I had left, and things were satisfied. But the government said that they were not going to release him from that performance bond until the project was actually completed by the new contractor, and they found that there were no issues. So they wanted to make sure the plumbing and the electrical, and that there were no major structural, like any structural cracks or whatever it is. So, but the contractor felt that the original contractor felt he ought to be released because the government had fired him, and gotten a new contractor. But the government the government took the position, we gotta wait and see how this building functions, because even though the new contractor is supposed to correct some of the things that we see, there could be things that we didn't see that the original contractor was obligated on the hook for. So because the government was unwilling to release the money at that time, to release the bond, the bank did not release the bond at that time. Okay, so you just cannot take the client's word for it, even if they get a proverbial pink slip and bring it to you. Okay, you have to check with all parties have to be consulted, and in this instance, the government was the party to whom the performance contract was issued. All right. Now, sometimes government may take in the let's say in the case of land development. So sometimes you see people doing subdivision development. Okay, the government may take some of those properties as a part of the performance bond. Okay, so for example, let's say that I am developing a 100 plot subdivision. So there are 100 parcels of land, 100 plots of land to be sold to individuals. The government will say, well, we want, you can't sell 10 of those. And so the government will decide which of those 10 it wants to keep under the obligation of the performance bond. Okay, and the reason that the government may take hold of land is because the developer, right, the subdivision developer has to meet certain, has to do certain things. So he has to put in roads, he has to put in infrastructure, utility infrastructure, whether that's sewerage, whether that's electrical, or lamp poles, that kind of thing, tarring the roads, etc. So the government would hold sufficient plots of land or lots of land, at least equivalent to or greater than the amount required to complete the infrastructural development. So if that subdivision developer does not do it, then the government can turn around and sell those, let's say in this instance, the 10 lots. They can sell those 10 lots and then use the money from the sale of those 10 lots to complete the infrastructural development, the roads, lamp poles, electrification, any sewerage or whatever that is required. All right? So that's another instance in which a performance bond can be used and is not supported by cash. And then finally, we're looking at the letter of credit, sometimes called the documentary credit. Okay. And the letter of credit normally is used for international trade. And we're going to be, you may want to flip put your finger to page 97 in your text. We could be looking at that chart in a few minutes. That's also part of international business. So the letter of credit or documentary credit guarantees the supplier, usually in another country, that goods shipped will be paid for up to the full amount of the purchase order, okay, by the purchaser. So let's look at how that. So you have the importer and the exporter, and they have trade taking place between them. So the exporter has goods that the importer wants. The importer needs to pay the exporter. And so the way to do that is through a letter of credit or a documentary credit. So the importer would go into his or her bank, okay, and they would execute, begin the process of executing a documentary credit or letter of credit, and that document guarantees payment to the exporter, and that normally goes through the exporter's bank, okay? So you have the importer and the exporter involved in trade, and the payment mechanism being handled by their respective banks, okay? So that's the simple chart, okay? There's also a more complex chart in that chapter, page 97, I think page 98 is a more complex version, but this is a simple version of how it works, okay? So importer gets goods from the exporter gets his money, is guaranteed payment or paid via this document, this facility called the letter of credit, using their banks, okay, their respective banks. Okay. Now with these these last five business items that I looked at, we looked at all, you see the note to the bottom there, all are written agreements, usually with a standard format or form document, and usually supported by cash, okay? And of course, in the case of the performance bond for the land developer, that sometimes is supported by land, so that'll be one of the exceptions, okay? Okay, any questions before we do a little exercise?
Yeah, Mr. Knowledge, I need to go back to customs bond and check. No, sorry. The bid bond and the performance bond. I know you did all that right, but I still at loss with those two. Let me see. You say the bid bond is just guarantee. It's just a guarantee that me, the contractor who is bidding, that I have the funds to complete the project.
Yes.
So it's my money.
The bid bond
but
might.
I'm just.
See, in the bidding process, right? So again, let's use the BAMSI. Let's use the BAMSI case. So you have some contractors who are bidding for the BAMSI job, okay?
Yeah.
So the process begins with the bidding process. So the government wants to have some sort of guarantee or surety, right? That these contractors who are bidding on this project have the ability to do the job. They want them coming and asking for for mobilization funds. I ain't got the money. Could you give me one
Okay.
$250,000 up front?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So in the bidding process, you have to complete a bid bond. Okay. So the successful bidder, okay,
Yes.
now has to provide a performance bond. Okay. So the same money that he placed under the bid bond, he now has to put that and probably even more under the performance bond. Okay. So the other
Because
people
at
who
the end of
bid
the
but were
day,
unsuccessful, they are released from their bid bonds.
okay. So at the end of the day, I'm using my money that I put up for bidding to develop whatever to do whatever development I need to do, and then I am paid after the fact.
Right. Just like I'm not sure if you were you conversing with construction financing, right? When people come to get a mortgage and they're paid, the contractor's paid in stages,
Yes.
right? So they have like five, like for regular house they have like 5 or 6 stages, right?
Yes.
So they have um, the foundation stage, then they have the Belcore stage, then they have the roof stage, then they have the windows and doors stage, then they have the
Yes.
completion stage, and then there's the retention stage. What's
Yes.
supposed to happen is the contractor is supposed to complete the foundation and then get paid.
Yes.
Often, often, I remember when I was in mortgage lending, not often, but sometimes, from time to time, you would have contractors who are unable um, they didn't have the money up front for one reason or the other, okay? And they didn't have credit with suppliers. So they would ask the people who borrowed to ask the bank for mobilization funds. That's what the government is trying to avoid with the bid bond process. Okay?
Okay.
They're trying to avoid mobilization. And if they have to do mobilization, they want to guarantee, okay, so you use all your money to put down on this bond, okay? Which means you don't have, because we're not holding that money, you don't have access to that money. Okay, so we will give you mobilization. Okay? But we know that we still have sufficient money to cover,
Yes.
okay?
Okay, that cleared it up a little better for me. Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Great question. And don't be afraid. We could, we go back until you understand it. As long as you don't understand it, we can always go back and make sure, because the whole point is for you to understand. Okay, so that was a great question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's do a little exercise here, class exercise. Okay, this is called match the product to the correct features and benefits. Okay, so on the column on the left, we have the product, and the column to the right, we have features and benefits. Normally in class, each person will have this will be a handout, and you would draw the lines to correcting them. But we don't have that. We don't have that luxury on Zoom, so we're gonna have to do something a little different. Okay, so the first one, overdraft or revolving fits that match up with.
Convenience.
Convenience, flexibility.
So the interest and based on your what?
Okay, so convenience, flexibility, and interest. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's correct. Okay, So the second one, the personal or the corporate credit card, which one does that match up with?
Low.
Short-term financing, interest-free if paid in full by due date, security, convenience, easy expense reconciliation.
Yep, okay, all right. The third one, the consumer or business loan, the consumer loan or business loan.
Installment payments.
All
Clear
payments,
payment
clear
terms.
payment terms,
Yes.
That's right.
fixed interest.
Correct. And then, of course, the last one, residential commercial mortgage,
Yes.
would be
Repayment.
longer repayment terms,
Longer
lower interest
repayment
rate,
terms, lower interest rate. Yeah.
accumulate interest over time.
Yes.
Okay. All righty. Okay, so that ends that chapter. Okay. All righty. So any questions at all on that chapter before we go to the next chapter, the interview?
No, not at this moment.
No.
Okay. All right. So try on your own time to complete the review questions for chapter 4. Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Knowledge. I didn't hear anything you said just now.
I said on your own, try to complete the review questions on for chapter 4 on page 19. Okay, and we'll go over that briefly next class.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so the interview. Alrighty. So there are some things that we do before the interview, some things we do during the interview, and some things that we do after the interview. Okay. I liken the and we're on page 20. Okay. This is a very short chapter, but there's some key items here. But I like to refer to as the interview sandwich. Okay. So you have the bottom piece of the bread, which is before. Then during is your beef patty, your lettuce, tomato, and all the other stuff. And then there's some stuff you do afterwards. You put your bun on top. Okay, so they're distinct. There's it's not it's not the same trying to put your beef patty together and your lettuce and tomato without putting that bun, the bottom part of the bun, first. Okay, so there's some things that you have to do before, during, and after. All right, and again, sometimes during class we have a little. I normally give this out where there's a pouch. I mean, we put things in the before pouch, the during pouch, and the after pouch, just to have a little fun in class, because most of the time you come in straight from work, and so you need to unwind and have a little bit of fun even while you're learning. Again, we can't do that on Zoom. Maybe maybe we'll get something where we can do it animated, but unfortunately we're not there yet. Things have been thrust upon us kind of suddenly. So we'll do the best we got. So before the interview, there are about 5 key things that you would want to do. And so you want to set or reconfirm the appointment date and time with the client. Okay. You want to ensure that you have an understanding of the customer's requirements. Okay. What it is they actually coming for. What type of interview this is. Okay. You want to pull the customer's relevant file, whether it's the credit file, the collateral security file, or whether it's the account mandate, or you might need to, pull one of those files, or at least review, depending on what type of interview it is. So if it's a specific problem-solving one to the client, I said they're questioning something on their loan account. Well, of course, you need to, probably print the section of the statement, the bank statement that they have a question on. Okay. 4, you want to have blank applications and forms available if they're coming to do a loan interview. Okay. And you want to have pen and paper available for yourselves. Okay. So again, set or reconfirm the appointment date and time, ensure you have an understanding of the customer's requirements, pull the customer's relevant file or files, have blank applications and forms available, have pen and paper also available. Okay. But like I said, 5, they're more than 5, then 9 items. Okay. Identify the area or the location or the office to be used. Depends on the type of interview. If it's very sensitive and you're in a cubicle, you might want to, there might be, your financial institution may have a small little meeting room or something like that, or you might want to arrange with someone who has an office who can vacate it for that time for you to use their office, so that it's confidential for the clients. Okay. So you want to identify or locate the area to be used. Remove distractions. Okay. Any radio noise, TV noise, public noise, if there's no traffic, that kind of thing. You would want to have your clients away from where there's a lot of traffic. That may not be. You might not be able to do it all the time, but to the extent that you can do it, do so. Some of our financial institutions, we have music playing in the background. We have the radio going on, or televisions going on, saying the news or the weather. So you want to, if you have a door you can close, or you just might want to, it's going to be an opportunity to have the piped music or the piped radio noise reduced, because it really shouldn't be loud so as to distract even the normal course of doing business in your financial institution. Okay. This is also very important. Clear your desk area of confidential material, particularly as it relates to other clients. Okay. So you might, if you have your in tray and your out tray, you may want to remove those if you can. Or if you can't remove them, you might just want to put a blank piece of paper over the file, so the other customers' names can be seen. Or if it's a file folder, flip it over so that the back blank side doesn't reveal the client's names or identities, right? The other clients' names or identities. Okay. And of course, you want to have access to your computer or customer information. So, you may have you may have thought that you did all in point number 3, where you've pulled the relevant customers file, or printed the relevant statement that they may be questioning or whatever it is. But sometimes, there's additional information that the customer requires. So if you have your computer there, you want to make sure that you have it facing you, But if it's something that you need to show the customer, that you can swivel it or pivot it so the customer can see it. But you want your computer positioned in a way that you can view the information yourself first before the customer actually sees it. Okay. Only that sometimes to get the customer, that particular customer, you may have to go into a list alphabetically, and you don't want the customer seeing other customer names, popping up. So once you have the specific information for the client, then you can, pivot your screen so the customer can see it. Alrighty. One of the things because at one time when I was a lender, I was also a collector. So I had a dual role at one financial institution. So I was a collector and I was a lender. And I used to tell some of my associates that I would move certain things from off the desk, like, the staplers and, pens and, my pencil container, the pencil holder, and stuff, because if you're dealing with an irate customer, you don't want them picking up the stapler and throwing it at you and hitting you. So from a safety point of view,
Mr. Knowledge, are you serious?
Oh, I'm serious. I would keep the stapler within my reach in case I needed to use it to throw it at somebody. Although I never needed that. I never had that opportunity to do that. But you see, especially nowadays, people have changed so much. I mean, 20 years ago, there were people doing these kind of things, right? Who would be very aggressive in the bank. And so and even if it's a lending, even if it's a loan application, when it comes to, let's say that loan has been declined, and you now have to give that kind of information to the client, they could, on the phone, they may
Yes.
appear very calm, right? But when they get before you and, you start to give them back the documents or whatever it is, they might get aggressive and take it out on you personally, and so, you have to prepare yourself for any eventuality,
So true.
When I was in lending, when I was in front office lending, usually the door was furthest away from you. Okay, so your desk or your desk, you were behind your desk, and the customer had the best getting in and out than you. Okay, so it was you and either the three walls behind you, or in one instance there's this great big glass on one side overlooking into the general area, right? And you had your blinds, but the door was further away from you. So if somebody attacked you, your mode of escape, in my mind, I always said that I would use my chair and either smash the window to the outside,
What?
or smash the glass in the main building, because I had a great big window leading to the outside, and I had a great big window leading to the general area where the waiting area was, and where the administrative assistants were, and the people who were doing the processing, right? Ms. Allen, you remember how loans department was set up in FinCo?
Yes, sir.
Right? Okay. So
Yes, sir.
So in my mind, I would say, if there was like a fire, I would use my chair to break the outside window. If a client came up to me, I'd use my chair to to break the glass and get out there because the door was further away from me. You know, so you know,
Use a chair to break the glass.
you know, you just have to, you know, you can't take anything for granted. You know, you never know what stress people are going through, and we've just you know, we're now trying to get normal again, whatever that's going to be, coming out of this, you know, these lockdowns or whatever. People are stressed. You know, they're going to be hollering at you about this thing going through and shouldn't have gone through, or this thing should have gone through and you ain't put it through, and so you know you know, and I need my money and da da da. So you're gonna have to be you're gonna have to take some precautions to protect yourself, probably even defend yourself, right? So so if that means you're having to grab the computer screen to block something from hitting you at the customer, including their fists, or you know, they grab off a shoe and try to hit you with a shoe, then you know, again, make sure your computer screen at a certain position where you could use it as a shield, you know. So some of these are, you know, you may say, well, you know, what does this have to do with lending, whatever it is? But you know, I'm trying to be as practical as I could be in real life.
Mr.
Okay?
Nodders,
These
you were
things
so
happen.
true. You were so true because the customers are coming in even more aggressive now, and nobody has respect for anybody anymore. Everybody's just all about me. They're selfish. They're angry, and so you're totally right on point. That is so true because we've had many encounters and experiences. I mean, enough to go on with stories, but you are so correct, and that's the sad part. That's the reality.
Yep, yep. And when you're having to I'm just scrolling. Okay, maybe I'll let me just deal with that now, right? When you are having to give the customer, let's say that the application has been declined, okay? Again, your tone and what you say and how you say it, your choice of words are very important, okay? So one of the things I learned is that first and foremost, you do not tell the person that they were declined, okay? You want to say the loan application has been declined, okay? You want to make that clear. The loan application has been declined, and has been declined for the following reasons, okay? I remember financial institution I was at, a lot of loan officers would tell the people, head office decline your loan, okay? You know, your bank is one organization. Everybody, you know, Bay Street Bank is Bay Street Bank, okay? It's not the loan department of Bay Street Bank. It's not the head office department of Bay Street Bank, okay? So the Bay Street Bank declined the application, okay? You don't have to say head office, okay? The loan application, not you, the loan application was declined, you know, and here are the reasons, okay? Or here's the reason, okay? The second thing I learned is that you try to give the people an alternative, okay? So you do not qualify for this loan at this time because of the following reasons. Here's what you can do, okay? Or here's an alternative, or you may consider doing this or doing that, okay? So and no matter how small it might be, okay, or trivial you may think it may be a big point for the client, okay? But it might be the only thing you have to throw at the client, I'm using the word throw at the client loosely, right? Maybe the only thing you have to throw at the client, to probably stop them from getting inflamed against you. Okay, so so try to have some alternative. Okay, it could be, maybe you told the client all along that they would, that the car they wanted was, why are you spending, $75,000 on a car? Okay, you know, you can get a nice, just as nice car, brand new, for $35,000, at such and such and such. So you don't need the Mercedes. Okay, save the Mercedes for a little later, right? Or you can say, hey, you know something, because a lot of financial institutions are now into the thing where they're talking about financial planning, financial advice, and say, hey, do you want me to set up an appointment with you with our financial planner, okay, who will be able to help you to get to that point. We'll be able to give you some pointers on what to do now and how to move forward to get to that point where you want to be, okay? Or if you are a financial advisor, you qualified according to your to do that by your financial institution. We say, here's a time now for us to really to look at it, give it a second look, okay? And so don't put the Mercedes out the picture altogether. What you might want to do, you can come back to the Mercedes, but let's start here, okay? And then you may want to say, hey, let's go with such and such a car, and then let's probably look at, you're living with your Grammy now. You want to own your own piece of property, okay? So I can help you, So if by getting this car, this lesser price car, you can now put yourself in a position to qualify for buying a piece of property and eventually get your own house. And so by doing stuff like that, right? You get you get the customer, this person really concerned about me, right? And usually you'll find that a lot of lenders are generally concerned and not just trying to save the backside from getting smacked by the customer or cussed out by the customer. Okay, so so again, I like I said, I learned two key things. One, the application was declined. Two, offer an alternative to the client. Okay, so that normally should come, after the interview, but I didn't see an actual thing for it after the interview. So I said I'll just cover it one time since we were talking about customer relations. Alrighty. So during the interview, so here's some things you want to do during the interview. Definitely, you want to pay attention and listen intently. Okay, the client will be able to tell if you are disinterested. Look like this woman just waiting to lunch. Must be 15 minutes. She ain't listening to me. Okay, but you want to give the client your undivided attention. Okay, so you listen to them intently, pay attention. Okay, to what they're saying. Sometimes you have to ask questions to clarify some of the things they're saying. Okay. But importantly, you want to outline the objective of the interview if it's at the outset. So you want to start by saying so you're here for a lot loan, right? And the person will say, no, not just a lot loan. I want a lot loan and I want to construct on it later. Okay. So then So then you may have to do some quick adjustments in your mind, and that's where having some of the different forms available at your fingertips in your drawer or nearby, because doing a mortgage for a land purchase is different from doing land and construction mortgage. So there are some more things available. So there's a different checklist. We'll be looking at some of the checklists that some of our financial institutions have that we look at to make sure that we cover everything that's required. Okay. So you want to outline the objective of the interview or the meeting. You want to ask open-ended questions. I'll come back to that in a minute. And you want to invite feedback. Okay. You want to repeat questions and answers for clarification. Okay. So periodically you need to make sure that you understand the client and also that the client understands what you're saying. Okay. So coming back to point number 3, ask open-ended questions. Okay. So for example, let's say you're doing the loan. This is a loan application, and you're actually now at the stage where you're completing the actual application. So, so you need information, and we're going to get into this. Not tonight. I had hoped to start getting into the loan application process tonight, but we're not going to get into that tonight. We'll have to do it next class. So I'll just finish with the interview tonight.
Sorry, Mr. Knowledge, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
You said to offer an alternative at which stage of the interview?
This would be like I indicated, that happens that should have happened at the end, but I was scrolling through after the interview when you now having to give the client an answer. There's some things I didn't see it there in my notes, and so since we were then talking about client behavior, I indicated, I took an opportunity to mention it then. But you would give the client the alternative once you've gotten the response. If you're not the approving officer, once you've gotten the response to the loan application, or to whatever it is, whatever the resolution is. But in this instance, we're looking at a lending interview, right? You would offer them the alternative that comes after the interview. Now, when you're having to talk to them about, this is the decision that was made, and if the decision was not to approve the loan.
Okay, so my question too is, would it be wise, because I'm experienced in terms of the whole credit and the interviewing process as well. I'm not a credit officer or loan officer, but I have some experience in that field. Typically, when an officer looks at the application, would it be, in your opinion, wise to offer another alternative then? Or you would suggest only doing it after the status of the loan, whether it's approved or pending or denied?
Well, some things will come up during the interview, right? And if you see that the numbers don't add up, you can offer an alternative then. You can say, hey, this doesn't look like this could quite work. But if we do this or that, or we did this instead of that, yes, you can offer an alternative during the interview, but sometimes we will do an application and it looks like all the ducks are lined up in a row, and the approving officer, whether that's your manager or the head office, they may not see it the same way, or they may come back with something that you overlooked. you didn't think of. And so it's at that stage then that you just sit back and maybe the approving officer, or I should say not the approving officer, but the officer making the decision, whether that's your manager or the head office, they may offer alternatives as well coming back. The client doesn't for this particular reason, blah blah blah. They don't qualify.
That's
You may
true.
want to consider such and such. So it may not be on you all the time to make an alternative.
Great. Thank you.
Now sometimes during the interview, particularly for the less experienced lender, you might want to just jot down some stuff that you're not sure of. And once you've gotten one or two of those, you may want to say, just give me more. You might want to step next door to your manager and say, is this something we could do? What do you think? I really want to help this customer, blah, blah, blah. So I've done that. And, I was an assistant manager, and I was still doing that with my manager, so, you never, you're never too, high up to ask questions.
That's true.
So, and me, sometimes, you might say I was looking out for the customer too much, but, we there to make a profit for the bank. But I also believe that we are there also to genuinely help the client. And if the client believes that we are genuinely trying to help him or her, that will go a long way for them to be a long-term client of ours. And they may go and spread the good news. And, a lot of the hitting the payment that a lot of loan officers have to do to meet their quotas, they won't have to do. When I was at Finco, there was one particular branch manager. She didn't have to do any hitting the payment and looking drumming up business, because she was just so customer service focused. She had people bringing their children and their grandchildren to her for mortgages. And other people heard about her, and developers heard about her, and they would go directly to her.
Yeah.
So she didn't have to beat the payment. She just got that. She had that reputation.
Those are like chronic customers, like when you have customers that frequently at any opportunity comes back to you, like on a monthly basis, or your customer. So even then, like, how do you handle those chronic customers who, I understand the alternatives, but it's, that this customer here is a repetitive customer, and their alternatives or their credit, whatever it is, their capacity has run out. So how do you handle those chronic customers when,
Yeah, well. See, with the chronic borrower, you that's a special type of client, okay? And there's a time when you just have to be frank with them, and say this is the situation. You don't need a client unless there's a genuine. Well, let me put it this way. If you have a borrowing client and keep coming back to you every month because they need a payment waived or they need more money for this, they have either they have a money management problem, or they need some education. They need educating on setting priorities in their life.
Agree.
It's one of those two things, and you're a banker. You're not a psychologist or psychiatrist. The best if you are a certified financial planner, or advisor or analyst, you might want to set up an appointment with them to to go through their budget with them, you know, and setting goals. You know, it can be done in a very very friendly, threatening way. You know, now they show that they ain't interested in that, and they just a chronic borrower. You know, there's some people you just have to, you know, at some point you just can't keep entertaining them, because you could use your time better elsewhere, where you're really making money. Because if you just keep rewriting loans or doing extensions and whatnot, you're not going to meet your quotas. You're not going to be as productive as you ought to be. You're not even your own self-actualization and being satisfied as an individual. You're not gonna meet it, because achieving certain things is gonna make you happy with yourself as an individual. I've achieved this, I've done this, or I've done that, you know. And a repeat customer is who just keep coming, you know. A repeat customer for you know, if I'm selling candy, I don't mind a repeat customer. Okay, so that so if I'm a candy store and I'm selling candy, or I'm selling donuts, you know, or shoes, I don't mind a repeat customer. But if I'm a financial institution and I'm doing loans, a chronic customer coming every month, or twice a month, or more than once a month, you know, is not the type of client that you need to continue to entertain. So if you can't come up with a amicable and good way of cutting them off, you may want to discuss that client with your supervisor, your manager, you know, and say, you know, what's the best way to handle this or manage this. Okay. But like I say, it could be you might want to invite them into a financial planning session or budgeting session, if that is something that your financial institution does, or pass them on to the person who does that in your financial institution. That may be the first step. I hope that helps.
A lot, greatly. Thank you.
Okay. So ask open-ended questions. Well, you know, there's sometimes when, you know, there's certain things, and we're gonna, when we start looking at the makeup of the loan application, we'll see that there's certain sections where you just have to, you know, you kind of, you know, that you're limited to the questions you can ask. So, you know, so when you're asking a name, age, whatever it is, those are direct questions, okay? But now when you come to the statement of affairs side of the application, when you're asking them for their, you know, their assets and their liabilities, that's when sometimes you need to ask open-ended questions, or you need to word your questions in a way to get a specific response. Okay, so one of my pet ones is this: is that, you know, and we're going to continue to have this problem until the credit bureau comes on stream full, you know, in full, right? So when you so until we can, you know, get a until we can get a credit report on a client to see exactly what they, you know, what they owe, you know, we got this kind of it's not the science part of, because the credit bureau would be the science part of lending, okay? But we got this, we got this art side that we have to deal with, because we now, depending on the customers, to be open and honest and frank with us, okay? So now when you start asking them about credit cards, okay? The average behavior will tell you they ain't got no credit card debt, or they'll only tell you about one credit card, okay? So I don't ask, when I was a lender, I had stopped very early asking them, do they have credit cards? Okay, so my question, how I dealt with credit cards, I say, okay, let's start with your credit cards now. And I say something like, I know you got a couple of them, right? And depending on, you know, your size of the person. So for example, you know, you meet them in the, you meet them in the waiting room, so you can tell the kind of type of person they are. They say, you know, something to them and, you know, joke or whatever it is, whatever. And then so when they come inside, they say, well, that was a father, one of you up, so I know you got more than one credit card in there. Okay, so so after a while you get to know, you know, certain things to say to certain types of people, just by some of their demeanor, and sometimes you get to know them when you're asking the basic questions up front. You know, the name, you know, how many dependents you have, where you live, kind of thing. Okay, so there's some questions. Okay, but ask open-ended questions and also word your questions in a way to get your desired results. So like I said, in this instance, I don't ask them, do you have any credit cards? I just say, let's start with your credit cards. You know, what's your limits? They have them. Okay, and that kind of takes them off. Okay, and this is where a little bit of psychology and kind of body language reading comes into play, because when you're interviewing them and you're asking them for their name, okay, you're asking them for the age, where they work, okay. Then there's some other questions that you ask them, you know, how many dependents do you have?
What's the number?
Okay? So by the time you finish,
Where you want it?
so by the time you finished some of those questions from the first part of the the loan application, which is basically they're just saying, they're just answering, you know,
I get it right
answering,
now.
you know, like name and those kind of questions, right? You get to see the kind, you know, look at their reactions, okay? So, you know, look for the eye, looking, you know, when they looking up and around or whatever it is, you know, trying to, you know, so now when you ask them about the credit cards and you see some of those kind of mannerisms take place, you say, yeah, this one, okay. They're trying to think of now what's the best answer to give me on this one. Okay, so you've kind of like psychoanalyzed them, and this is why when I'm talking about applications, particularly for first-time borrowers, I would recommend that you don't do these applications on the phone, okay, or online, okay. There's merit to seeing these people face to face, because there's an aspect of lending called character, okay, and we're going to look at that when we look at Campari and the credit C's, okay, because character is the first letter in Campari, C, character.
Right.
And it's also one of the C's of
the
credit
080 going in 3 of them. Say put 2020 in Miami on me.
Okay, so interviewing the person in person is very important. It has its I know some financial institutions are moving towards, you know, online or telephone interviews, but I would caution that you have those types of interviews for existing customers, okay, not brand new customers. Okay, brand new customers, my personal view is we should still be interviewing them face to face. Okay. Again, invite feedback. You know, ask them. You know, do you understand this process? You know, I need such and such. We need this because. So explain why you need it. Okay. And again, repeat questions. And answers for clarification. So let me just try to quickly wrap this up so I can let you good folk go. So I'll keep it too much past the time.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
This has nothing to do with the chapter, but just as a point of etiquette, can you ask the students to make sure the phone is muted or on mute, please? It's kind of difficult hearing you and competing with the internet, which is in and out.
Yes,
If
yes.
you're not
I was getting.
speaking,
I
you
didn't
could,
know that
you know.
there was.
I agree.
Yeah, I didn't know it was cross. I don't know if there was a feed or whatever it is. But yes, if we can mute our mics until, because just like in the interview, when you're doing Zoom meetings, you need to be in an area where you can have your privacy. That's not possible all the time because some of us, we have children, we have other family members, or you just don't have a separate room that you can, lock away that has a door. There may be a separate room, but it may not, maybe an open door, whatever it is. But to the extent to which you can have privacy, so as not to interrupt other students, that would be wonderful. Okay. So 6, display and express empathy. Apologize for any company errors or mistakes. This would be the case where this is a problem-solving interview where the bank has made an error, so so you want to apologize for the company errors and mistakes. Don't go too heavy, but try to sound sincere, okay, in your apology, and move on. And the thing that the most important part of the problem-solving interview is that you want to move on to what you have done or what you're going to do to make it right. Okay. Gather any relevant information or documentation you may need at that particular time. So, in the case of a lending interview, the person may have their job letter handy, or you may need to update your KYC documentation. Maybe the identification you have on file is expired, so you need a new one, or maybe they no longer live at a certain address, so you need something for new proof of their new residence. But gather whatever relevant information you need at that time and that they have at that time. Okay. Maintain control of the interview. Okay, you will notice that when I at the beginning, there's that lady to the top. She started off shaking in her boots. Okay, but then down to the left, you see her, man. She doing selfies and all kind of things, right? So that's just kind of like extreme, but you want to maintain control of the interview. Also, when you're sometimes you have clients and then they seem to be giving you too much information, but sometimes that information is good if you can control it. Okay. So, for example, you are asking the client some of the basic information for the first part of the loan application. Name, where they live, right? And so they say, "Yeah, I stay with my mother. Boy, she's one disgusting woman. She got diabetes and da 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 da, and and blah blah blah." So so you've gotten quite a bit of information there, believe it or not. Okay, because you now know that this person lives with a relative. They're possibly not paying rent, but you also know that this person who they're living with may possibly be a dependent. The person has some illness. So if it's diabetes, it's highly unlikely that that they're going to recover from it. So so that might be a continued challenge. So you might want to press. How is she managing it? Is she ambulatory? no child, she already had one leg cut off and and she need she need another leg cut off. So then you kind of formulate in your mind, okay, this person probably soon have to come back. They want to get this loan now for this car, but they can soon come back to me saying this, their mother now need to have another surgery, to have the next foot cut off or whatever it is. So there's some things that are going through your mind, so you're looking at, does this person have the capacity for that kind of eventuality? Okay, but you don't want them to get on too much. But sometimes when they do say those things, you're learning something about their character, and you're learning something about their life, and you're learning something about their that could possibly affect the payments um, uh, of any loan that they propose getting from you. Okay, so again, maintain control of the interview, allow some latitude, because two, it gives you an opportunity to kind of bond with your client. Okay, and above all, remain professional and polite. Okay, and then the last four of that section during the interview, clearly restate the problem or the need to be resolved. Reassess any information provided for completeness. So you want to go through the documents. So I have these, but I need these. Okay, and remember I mentioned about a checklist earlier for land loans and construction loans and that sort of stuff. So there's a checklist. So what you do is you check off what you have and say, these ones that these ones that are unchecked are what I need, okay, from you. But of course, you keep a copy for yourself. Okay, so so as and when you get those items, you can check them off, and the customer also will see what he or she needs. Okay, and then of course, if necessary, provide a callback time by which a determination would be reached or additional information requested. Okay, so so if your turnaround time is you have everything, you can if you your turnaround time is 24 hours or 48 hours, again, answer back to them, and you have everything that you need, then of course you can tell them, 2 days from now, you can check back with us, okay? Or if they don't have all the information with them, and there's a checklist, you can probably agree with them, so when is a reasonable time you think you can have the stuff back for me? Oh, by next week Wednesday. Okay, next week Wednesday. So then you will be able to put that application on some sort of diary to come up for that Wednesday morning, so that you can then call and follow with the client, okay, for those items, because you want to know if the client is going to proceed any further. If they're not going to proceed any further, then you probably want to discard that item, so you don't have to follow up with it anymore. Okay, and then of course thank the customer and invite any further questions or feedback. Okay. Any questions on that? And then I'm going to wrap up with the 9 points quickly with the interview. After the interview, no further questions. Okay, so after the interview, you're going to document as clearly as possible all that transpired. Okay, so you have the customer's credit file, their working file, or whatever you call it. You want to make some notes. We discussed this, blah blah blah, on the possibility of that. They're going to get back to me on Wednesday, blah blah blah. Okay. You want to conduct a preliminary assessment of the investigation. So based on information you have, the unconfirmed information and some of the confirmed information, is this something that can be done? Does this loan look like it can go or not? And again, that depends on whether you call them back and say, hey, XYZ is the case. Okay. Notify any appropriate person up or down as required. This may not be a step that's required in your organization. Make sure, provide the customer an updated status. That's going back to this point here. Provide a callback time, point number 13, provide a callback time by which a determination will be reached or additional information requested. That's where that comes in, okay? Provide customer with updated status. So when you call to follow up, you either get an updated status from them or you provide them with an updated status on their loan application if everything was submitted. Okay. And then, of course, after the interview, you fully investigate and further assess the matter. So if you have to do any credit checks or background checks or whatever is required, you can do those. And the last 4 items here. Request any additional information that might be required. So when you do your follow-up on point 4, you can request any additional information that you may require. Once you've gotten everything, you can make your final determination or decision, or give it to your manager or your head office to make the decision. And once the decision has been made, you notify the customer. And once the customer has been notified, then you can do whatever is necessary to begin effecting that decision. So if it's approved, you now do whatever is necessary to process that transaction. Okay, that loan application. Okay. Any questions on that?
No, sir.
Okay, that'll be it for the night. I was hoping to start chapter 6, the lending process introduction. We're still making good time. We'll do that next class. Okay, so the lending process introduction and we'll definitely cover that, and we'll begin looking at essential elements to begin chapter 7. Okay, so chapter 6 and some of chapter 7 we'll look at next class. Okay, so your assignment will be to complete the end of chapter questions for those 2 chapters, chapter 4 and 5, and do any reading that you need to do in preparation for next week's class. Have a great evening and a great week. And if you have any questions in the interim,
Same to you.
yes. Any questions in the interim, send me an email. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Nordage, you said just do the homework, or you sending us homework? Just do the questions in the back of the book?
No, you probably won't have questions on homework again until next. It's almost like every 2 weeks kind of thing. You might have homework.
Okay.
I
Mr.
mean,
Nordage, can I get your email, please?
graded homework. Let me say that, graded homework. Okay, but you'll always have reading to do, or you can always occupy your time at the end of chapter questions.
Definitely. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Mr. Nordage,
Yes, ma'am.
can I have your email, please?
Okay. That's gnordage .biffs BIFS
Okay.
@gmail.com.
Okay. Are you able to tell me if you have my correct email address? Because I didn't get the homework, the last homework, and I don't get the invites to the class.
Okay. You're Shantia?
I am.
Okay. Okay, I didn't see you on the listing, and so what I will do is well, like I said, I know Miguel is the administrator for this particular for these sessions.
Okay.
So so I'm sure he's here in the exchange, but I will specifically send to him and to Ms. Dean to make sure that you're added to the list for the Zoom.
Okay, thank you. How do I go about, if possible, making up the last homework? Because I don't want to have anything outstanding.
Well, I will send you the homework. You can do the homework because the homework will be a good study tool. Okay. But you'll have sufficient sufficient homeworks. You'll have sufficient homeworks by at the end. Because normally what I do is I I dropped the lowest score in the homework.
Okay.
Okay, so so at the end of the day, we'll probably have like 5, 6 homeworks. You know, minimum five or 6. So you know, that's you know, good material for you to study on, along with the end
Okay.
of chapter questions, etc.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Shantia.
Bye-bye.